today I'm going to read chapters 13, 14 and 15 of The Ice Monster by David Walliams. Chapter 13, A Sea of Old Men. Sitting on a grand chair that made her look even smaller than her actual size, and she already looked extremely small, was Queen Victoria. Gathered behind her was a sea of old men with white beards, spectacles, and stern expressions. They looked like learned men, scientists, explorers, and politicians. Mr. Clout circled the room like a hungry shark, ready to attack anyone who made a lunge for Her Majesty. Commissioner Barker was doing the exact same thing. The pair kept on bumping into each other. "Oof! Out of the way, you fool!" growled Barker. Masked by a red velvet curtain, something the size of a house was standing in front of the tiny Queen. A portly man stepped forward and addressed the gathering. He was the director of the Natural History Museum, Sir Ray Lancaster. "Your Majesty, my lords, gentlemen," he began. "Speak up," shouted Queen Victoria. Elsie put her hand over her mouth to stifle a giggle. She wouldn't have had Her Majesty down as a heckler. Poor Lancaster looked aghast, as you might if the most powerful person in the world was barracking you. The man tried to carry on as best he could. "Your Majesty, my lords, ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice cracking with nerves. "As director of the Natural History Museum, it is a huge honour to house what I am sure you will all agree is the greatest find of the century. When a group of explorers set off across the Arctic—" "Get on with it!" shouted the Queen. Yes, of course, Your Majesty. I'm very, very sorry. I know you have an empire to run. Will you please do us all the honour of unveiling the creature dubbed the Ice Monster, which has been perfectly preserved in the ice for thousands of years?" With some difficulty, the Queen stood up. Her handsome attendant, Abdul Karim, went to help her. "I can do it, thank you very much, Munchie," she snapped. Munchie was the fond title Queen Victoria gave Abdul. It is a Persian word which means secretary, though he was a great deal more than that to her. "As you wish, Your Majesty," he purred. "Actually, can you help me?" she asked, looking a little wobbly. Abdul gracefully took her arm and she shuffled over to the exhibit. "It gives one great pleasure," began the Queen, "to declare this woolly mammoth open." With that, she tugged on the cord and the velvet curtain slipped to the floor. Silence. There it was, in all its glory, housed in a huge glass tank, suspended in ice. The mammoth, perfectly preserved. It was impossible to believe it had been dead for 10,000 years. To all appearances, it could have died yesterday. The creature looked like a cross between an elephant and a teddy bear. The tusks were long and curled, like the moustaches of many of the fusty old men gathered in the museum. Between the tusks hung a long, furry trunk. The mammoth's body was covered in coarse brown hair, with a thicker and darker tuft on its head, like a wig. Its legs were as wide as tree trunks, leading down to 4 clumpy feet. Its eyes were open. They were small and black, and shaped like tears. For Elsie, it was love at first sight. This was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. Her heart soared and her mind began dancing with pictures. Here she was stroking the animal's fur. There she was riding on its back. Then she was being held by its long furry trunk. Just as she was flying off into a land of make-believe, Elsie sensed someone standing right behind her. The girl was frozen with fear. She couldn't even turn her head to look around. Then she felt a hand come to rest on her shoulder. Elsie gasped for air to let out a cry. But she couldn't. A hand was covering her mouth. Chapter 14. Dead as dead can be. Shh, came the voice behind her. Don't give yourself away. Elsie knew that voice. It was the only adult voice she ever remembered speaking to her in a tone of kindness. Dotties! Elsie turned round and whispered, Thank goodness it's you. Everyone is looking for you, young miss. I know, I'm not supposed to be here. You don't say, replied the cleaning lady. Truth be told, I'm not supposed to be here either. A humble cleaner isn't allowed to be in the same room as Her Queen the Majesty. Her Majesty the Queen? Dotty looked at the girl as if she were bonkers. That's what I said, but I couldn't resist being here. I love our Queen. Dotty gazed down proudly at the lady. Oh, that reminds me, I must buy a stamp. 2 stories below, the Queen was looking up at the frozen creature. Well, so this is the famous ice monster.
Yes, ma'am, replied the director. It is a huge feat of engineering for the museum to keep the animal's body conserved like this. That pipe you can see hanging down from the ceiling blows cold air into the tank through that hatch to keep the ice it is packed in frozen.
It is a bit small for a monster. Lancaster was once again blindsided by the lady.
He spluttered. I can only apologise, Your Majesty, but this mammoth is probably only a year or so old. It is a child, really.
The Queen looked lost in thought for a moment. Have you got any bigger ones? Lancaster looked desperately around at the faces of the assembled great and good for help, but none came.
No, I'm afraid not, ma'am. Finding any prehistoric creature, let alone one in such perfect condition, is extremely rare. This is the find of the century.
My dear departed husband, Prince Albert, would have liked it. Such a shame he isn't here with me to see this. Albert loved animals. I am more of an opera fan myself, aren't I, Munchie? Her elegant companion smiled weakly. You have a unique singing voice, Your Majesty. His wry answer made the old lady chuckle. The chuckle turned into a cough. A concerned Abdul steadied her. Thank you, Munchie. I don't know what I would do without you. Nor me without you, Your Majesty. The unlikely pair shared a smile. Then the Queen looked back up at the mammoth. Does it do anything? She inquired.
I am so sorry, Your Majesty. What do you mean? Replied Lancaster.
Sweat was now pouring off his brow. Like a trick? She asked with girlish excitement. The museum's director paused before he spoke, gathering his thoughts.
Sadly not, Your Majesty. This creature has been dead for 10,000 years, so, as dead goes, I would say you can't get much deader. It's as dead can be. Oh, that is a shame. I suppose it is rather pretty if you like that sort of thing, which I do. Lancaster shuffled awkwardly. Do you have any other questions, Your Majesty?
The Queen thought for a moment. When are we having the tea and cake? I was dragged halfway across London to come here. These days I don't like to leave the palace too much. At my age it all becomes a bit of a bother. But my eyes lit up at the promise of tea and cake, you see, and I haven't been seen so much as a raccoon.
I meant any questions about the mammoth, Your Majesty.
The what?
This creature here.
No, replied the Queen with her customary bluntness.
Shame it's dead already,
came a deep voice from the shadows of the hall.
Or I would shoot it.
All heads turned to see who had so rudely interrupted Her Majesty the Queen. Chapter 15. Extinction Business. Out of the darkness stepped a figure dressed in a pith helmet, knee-high lace-up boots and a khaki coat. A plume of grey cigar smoke followed it. "Who the blazes is that?" demanded the Queen, struggling to see.
Oh, no, no, stammered Lancaster.
"Who is it?"
Lady Buckshot, the big game hunter, Your Majesty, replied Lancaster.
"Oh, no," agreed the Queen. Disapproving murmurs echoed around the hall. "What is she doing here?" pressed the Queen.
Well, ma'am, replied the hunter, I shot and killed every single stuffed animal in the museum.
"Such a shame the animals weren't harmed, or they could have fired back," hissed the Queen to Abdul, just loud enough for Buckshot to hear. Abdul couldn't help but laugh.
It's a shame this here monster is already dead, began Buckshot. It would have been my great pleasure to shoot it, right between the eyes. Well, Lady Buckshot, spluttered Lancaster, the mammoth is as a species, has long since been extinct. I'm in the extinction business, replied the hunter. I would wipe out every last creature on earth if I could.
How delightful for you, said the Queen sarcastically. Now, where is this tea and cake? Lancaster leaped in.
Tea and cakes will now be served in the gallery, if you would follow me.
The Queen took Abdul's arm and she shuffled out of the hall. The great and the good all followed, which left Buckshot alone with the mammoth. From the top of the stairs, Elsie and Dotty watched as she marched right up to the front of the tank. There she mimed taking out a shotgun, loading it and firing.
Boom!
She even provided a sound effect before miming the mammoth's brains splurging out. Ha 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 ha! She chuckled to herself before drifting back into the shadows. Now only Elsie and Dotty were left in the main hall. I am trembling, chattered Elsie, holding on to the balcony rail. The evil stench of Buckshot's cigar smoke had snaked all the way up there. Me too, evil woman. She's always dragging in some poor tiger or lion she's shot, with a wicked grin on her face. So, now she's gone, do we dare? Asked the girl. Dare what? Replied the cleaning lady. Do we dare to go down and take a closer look? Dotty shook her head. Oh, Elsie, you get me into deep doo-doo. Let's just have a very, very, very quick look. When the girl put it that way, it was hard to say no. A very quick look? Asked Dotty. A glance, really. A glimpse? Less than a glimpse, a peep. A peek? Exactly, replied Elsie. Dotty sighed heavily. All right then, let's have a peek at this mammoth. I think it's a mammoth, corrected Elsie. Yes, mammoth, that's what I said. Elsie smiled and pulled the lady along by her sleeve. Dotty, come on. And next time we'll read chapter 16. Bye-bye.